Welcome to Audit the Audit, where we sort out the who and what and the right and wrong of police interactions. This episode will be different from our regular format. As you have likely gathered from the title of this video, this episode will focus on an interaction that is still developing. Although the Arbery case is not necessarily a police interaction, there are still many legal functions at play that are worth exploring. The fate of Mr. Arbery has reopened the floodgates of political polarization, and thus, much of the media coverage of this incident has been saturated with a contextual narrative governed by the agendas of syndicated outlets and social media outrage. This episode will take a deep dive into the facts of the encounter, as well as explore the legal nuance in effect throughout. Before we dive into the episode, I want to give a big thanks to the sponsor of this video, Raid Shadow Legends. Enter the rich and meticulously detailed world of Teleria as you collect epic champions, equip enchanted armors, and endlessly upgrade your team of heroes for battle. The raid experience starts at your home base. The portal is where you access your champions and open shards to get even more. The tavern is where you upgrade your champions and sacrifice weaker allies to make your team stronger. If you want the best weekly rewards, then you can join a clan and fight clan bosses. But if fast-paced PvP is more your style, then you can jump into the arena to go head-to-head with other players. Raid also hosts ongoing tournaments where you compete against the entire raid community while fighting your way through spiders, golems, and of course, dragons. Raid is completely free, cross-platform, and available on mobile devices and PC. You can find me in the game under the name Audit the Audit. And if you join now using the link in my description, you will get an exclusive welcome pack that contains 100,000 silver and a free epic champion, Jotun. You can find your rewards in your inbox, but only for the next 30 days, so click that link while you can. Thanks again to Raid for sponsoring this video. On February 23, 2020, 25-year-old Ahmaud Marquez Arbery was shot and killed during a confrontation with 34-year-old Travis McMichael and his 64-year-old father, Gregory McMichael, in a suburban community in southern Georgia. No arrests were made on the day of the shooting, and the incident went unnoticed for approximately 2 months. It wasn't until a local Brunswick radio station, WGIG, posted a graphic video of the encounter that the outrage grew to a national level, sparking criticism from activists, celebrities, and politicians alike. The video was leaked to the radio station by local criminal defense attorney Alan Tucker after an informal consultation with the McMichaels. Mr. Tucker told the New York Times that he leaked the video in an attempt to dispel rumors that the shooting was a racially motivated execution. Within days of the video's release, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations took over the case, and on May 7, 2020, the McMichaels were arrested and charged with murder and aggravated assault. Mr. Arbery attended Brunswick High School, where he was an all-star linebacker on the school's football team. He graduated in 2012 and went on to study electrical systems at the South Georgia Technical College the following fall. During his first college semester, Mr. Arbery was arrested for bringing a handgun into the Brunswick High gymnasium during a basketball game and was ultimately sentenced to 5 years probation as a first-time offender. He was arrested again in 2018 on minor shoplifting charges, but we will discuss that incident in a moment. According to Mr. Arbery's family and friends, he was an avid jogger and was known to run in the neighborhood surrounding his home. Although he had a rocky past, Mr. Arbery was on the path to establishing a successful career and had not been involved in any criminal activity for nearly 2 years. Travis McMichael was a longtime resident of the Satilla neighborhood and the son of Gregory McMichael, who was a retired investigator from the Brunswick Judicial Circuit District Attorney's Office and a 7-year veteran of the Glenn County Police Department. Mr. Gregory's career as a police officer was relatively uneventful, but after several years as an investigator, it was discovered that Mr. Gregory never completed his peace officer standards training from 2005 to 2010, including the necessary firearms and deadly force programs that all officers are required to take. When Glenn County District Attorney Jackie Johnson learned about the lapse in training, she visited the office of the state's Police Officer Standards Training Director, Mitch Jones, who eventually decided to grant Mr. Gregory a waiver and allow him to continue working as an investigator for the next 5 years. In February of 2019, Mr. Gregory's office certification was suspended for undisclosed reasons, and he was reassigned to the Camden County District Attorney's Office and was stripped of his official law enforcement capacity. In a memo signed by Glenn County DA Office Administrator Mark Spaulding, Spalding, the office stated that Mr. Gregory, quote, will not carry a firearm or badge, nor will he operate any vehicle that would be construed as being law enforcement in nature. Unlike most states, arrest powers are not required to become an investigator in Georgia, and Mr. Gregory was allowed to continue working until he retired a short time later. The McMichaels have no public history of racism, and have categorically denied the notion that race played a role in their confrontation with Mr. Arbery. However, the McMichaels do have a connection to Mr. Arbery. Mr. Gregory aided in the prosecution of Mr. Arbery in his 2018 shoplifting case. The scope of Mr. Gregory's involvement has been difficult to pinpoint, but it is a connection worth noting. The Glynn County Police Department has a troubled past. Over the last decade, the department has faced 17 different lawsuits and serious accusations of misconduct, which culminated in the arrest of Glynn County Police Chief John Powell and 3 other high-ranking officials earlier this year. The officers were indicted on charges stemming from an attempt to cover up a questionable relationship between a Glynn County narcotics officer and 2 of the confidential informants he worked with regularly. A grand jury indicted the Glynn County Police Chief and 2 former officers, as well as the police chief from a neighboring county on 20 counts, ranging from violating an oath of office to witness tampering. Prior to the high-profile arrests made earlier this year, the department also struggled with a mentally unstable officer in 2018 who eventually killed his estranged wife and her friend before succumbing to a gunshot wound himself. Chief Powell was originally brought in to help clean up the department, which was described as suffering from poor training, outdated policies, and a, quote, culture of cronyism, end quote, by Glynn County's manager. Chief Powell was indicted just days after Mr. Arbery's shooting. Satilla Shores is a quiet suburban community nestled just outside of the coastal city of Brunswick, Georgia. With a population of just over 400, Satilla Shores is relatively secluded and lends itself to upper-middle-class residents. The Satilla neighborhood is uniquely centered between the veins of the South Brunswick River and is bordered by the Jekyll Island Causeway to the north. Due to the nature of the landscape, most of the houses in the community are only 20 or 30 feet from each other. This island-like housing layout offers neighbors a chance to get to know one another and promotes a community-oriented lifestyle. According to census figures, Glynn County is 70% white and 27% black. The incidents surrounding Mr. Arbery's death stretch back to October 25, 2019, when surveillance footage captured an unidentified black male entering a construction site at 220 Satilla Drive, just a few houses down from the McMichael residence. On November 17th, surveillance footage shows an unidentified white female and white male entering the residence just after 10 p.m. The owner of the property, Larry English, reported the incidents to the police, but noted that nothing was stolen. Exactly 1 month later, the cameras captured another unidentified black male walking through the site at approximately 9:30 p.m. This incident was not officially reported to police, but Mr. English was aware that it occurred. On February 11th, 2020, surveillance footage captured yet another black male entering the site. But this time, the suspect was spotted by Mr. Travis and another neighbor. Mr. Travis confronted the intruder and chased him for a short distance, but stopped short after he saw the intruder reaching into his waistband. Fearing the suspect may be armed, Mr. Travis made a call to 911.
What's going on?
We've had a string of burglaries. I was leaving the neighborhood, and I just caught a guy running into a house being built 2 houses down from me. When I turned around, he took off running into the house.
Okay. What did he look like?
It's a black male, red shirt, white shorts.
And you said the house is being built?
It's being built, yes ma'am. It's vacant right now. He is in the house.
What's your name and phone number, sir?
Travis McMichael.
All right. Where are you at now?
I am sitting right across the street in my truck, watching the house with it right now, right here at Satilla.
Okay. What kind of truck are you in?
A red Ford F-150.
Okay. Are you okay?
Yeah. It just startled me. When I turned around and saw him and backed up, he reached into his pocket and ran into the house. So I don't know if he's armed or not. But he looked like he was acting like he was, so, be mindful of that.
Okay. Which pocket did he reach into?
Left, I believe.
Okay. And how many houses down is it from yours?
It's 2 towards the highway. I guess he doesn't realize we're here. He's got lights on right now. He's got a flashlight looking through the house.
Does he? Okay. You just stay where you're at so that the officers will know.
Will do. Will do.
Okay. And I'll stay on the line with you until they get there, just in case anything changes.
Roger that.
Although nothing was ever reported to have been stolen from the construction site, the Satilla Shores community suffered 3 break-ins over the span of 3.5 weeks during the 2019 holiday season. On December 8, 2019, an unidentified resident reported rifles stolen from their unlocked car. On December 28th, police records note that another theft was reported, but who made the report and what was stolen has not been revealed. On January 1st, Mr. Travis filed a report of a firearm stolen from his truck. There is no clear evidence that links Mr. Arbery or the other suspects who entered the construction site to the Satilla Shores thefts. But this reported string of break-ins is what prompted the McMichaels to confront Mr. Arbery as he jogged past their house on the afternoon of February 23rd. Just after 1 p.m. on February 23rd, a Satilla Shores resident called 911 to report an unidentified black male entering the construction site at 220 Satilla Drive.
Glen Brunswick Communications, Operator Smith.
Hey, I live out at Satilla Shores.
Okay.
There's break-ins out here. There's a guy in the house right now. It's a house under construction.
Okay, do you have your address or that house's address?
Right at 219 or 220 Satilla Drive.
And you said someone's breaking into it right now?
No, it's all open. It's under construction. And he's running right now. There he goes right now.
Okay, what is he doing?
He's running down the street.
Okay.
Back into the
Okay, that's fine. I'll get them out there. I just need to know what he was doing wrong. Was he just on the premises and not supposed to be?
Stuff on it, and he's been caught on the camera a bunch before at night. It's kind of an ongoing thing out here. The man that's building the house has got heart issues. I think he's not going to finish it. So.
Okay, that's fine. And you said it was a male in a black t-shirt?
A white t-shirt, black guy, white t-shirt, and he's done run back into the neighborhood.
During the call, Mr. Arbery exited the site and ran down Satilla Drive toward Buford Road, passing the McMichaels residence. Unaware of the 911 call, Mr. Gregory spotted Mr. Arbery running down the street and called to his son before the two armed themselves and got into their truck and drove down Satilla Drive in pursuit of Mr. Arbery. The McMichaels made contact with Mr. Arbery at the intersection of Satilla Drive and Holmes Drive and attempted to cut him off. Mr. Arbery began to run back from the direction that he had come from, when another resident, William Bryan, attempted to cut him off with his vehicle. Mr. Arbery ran past Mr. Williams' truck as Mr. Gregory jumped into the bed of his son's truck and continued their pursuit. According to the official police report, the McMichaels pulled up next to Mr. Arbery and shouted for him to stop and talk to them. With Mr. Williams following behind at a distance while recording on his cell phone, Mr. Travis exited the truck, at which point a physical confrontation occurred, resulting in Mr. Arbery's death. At approximately 1:14 p.m., moments before the altercation began, Mr. Gregory made a 911 call.
911, what's the address of your emergency?
I'm out here at Satilla Shores. There's a black male running down the street.
Satilla, where at Satilla Shores?
I don't know what street we're on. Stop right there! Stop! Travis!
Sir, hello, sir. Sir, where you at? Hello? Hello?
Mr. Arbery was pronounced dead at 1:46 p.m. by the Glynn County coroner, but initial reports suggest that Mr. Arbery succumbed to his wounds almost immediately. A total of 3 shots were fired during the encounter. According to the autopsy report, 2 shots struck Mr. Arbery's torso, with the third hitting his hand and arm. The report also concluded that Mr. Arbery had no drugs or alcohol in his system. Much of the initial evidence surrounding the incident is contained within a 1-page police report drafted solely on the witness testimony of Mr. Gregory. If the Glynn County Police did interview any other witnesses, it was not included in the official report. The narrative of the police report suggests that Mr. Arbery initiated the altercation by launching an unprovoked attack on Mr. Travis. The GCPD officers failed to include any testimony from the residents who lived near the scene of the incident or from Mr. Williams, who directly witnessed the entire event. Mr. Williams did hand over a copy of his cell phone video to the officers, but no arrest was made at the time. The case initially came under the jurisdiction of Brunswick District Attorney Jackie Johnson, but she has since recused herself from the case amid a myriad of controversy. On May 9th, the Glynn County Police Department released a statement claiming that District Attorney Johnson ordered the officers not to make an arrest, despite the officers concluding that they had probable cause to arrest the McMichaels. DA Johnson's office publicly denied the claims, but the department stood by its statements and went on to reveal that Waycross Judicial Circuit District Attorney George Barnhill told them that the killing of Mr. Arbery was, quote, justifiable homicide. On February 27th, the Georgia Attorney's Office received a request from DA Johnson's office to transfer the case to a different prosecutor. On the same day, the Georgia Attorney General's office appointed Waycross DA Barnhill as the presiding prosecutor, and neither DA Jackson nor DA Barnhill informed the Georgia Attorney General's office that Barnhill had already actively participated in the case by reviewing evidence and giving his opinion on whether arrest should occur. On April 1st, DA Barnhill received Mr. Arbery's autopsy report, and the next day, he wrote a memorandum to the Glynn County PD recommending that no arrests be made. Mr. Barnhill wrote that Mr. Arbery's killing was an act of self-defense and pointed to Mr. Arbery's prior convictions as testimony to his character. DA Barnhill also informed the Glynn County Police that he was recusing himself from the case due to connections between his son and Mr. Gregory, who had worked closely together under the Brunswick DA's office. On April 7th, Mr. Barnhill wrote to Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr requesting that the case be transferred to another prosecutor, and also stating that Mr. Arbery's family are, quote, not strangers to the local criminal justice system, pointing to Mr. Arbery's brother and cousin's tangles with the law, and noting that there was, quote, video of Mr. Arbery burglarizing a home immediately preceding the chase and confrontation. Mr. Barnhill also revealed that he had recently learned that Arbery had previously been prosecuted in an earlier case by the Brunswick Circuit District Attorney's Office, by both Barnhill's son and Mr. Gregory. Mr. Barnhill's request did not explain why he had delayed in recusing his office from the case, did not mention that he had advised Glynn County Police on April 2nd to make no arrests, and omitted his involvement on February 24th, instead only recounting his involvement upon taking the case. On April 13th, the Georgia Attorney General's office appointed Atlantic Judicial Circuit District Attorney Tom Durden to take over the handling of the case. Within hours of the video of the interaction going public, DA Durden said that he would present the case to, quote, the next available grand jury in Glynn County to decide if charges should be filed, and accepted Georgia Governor Brian Kemp's offer to bring in the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to investigate. The GBI found probable cause to charge Gregory and Travis McMichael within 36 hours of taking the case, and on May 7th, arrested the pair on charges of murder and aggravated assault. The McMichaels were booked into jail and denied bail the following day. DA Durden then submitted yet another request for the case to be transferred to a different prosecutor, citing the limitations of his small staff. On May 11th, Mr. Durden's request was granted, and the case was reassigned to the Cobb County District Attorney's Office, led by Joyette M. Holmes. This move shifted responsibility for the case from a Southeast Georgia District Attorney to a District Attorney in North Georgia's metro Atlanta area, and was welcomed by Mr. Arbery's family. On May 10th, Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr said that his office would review how the investigation into Arbery's death was handled from the beginning, and instructed the GBI to investigate whether the first two district attorneys who handled the matter committed misconduct by possibly misrepresenting or failing to disclose information during the process of appointing a prosecutor to investigate the case. Attorney General Carr also called for a federal investigation into the communications between the different district attorneys' offices, to which the Justice Department responded by tapping the FBI and the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Georgia to launch an investigation to determine whether federal hate crime charges are appropriate. The McMichaels remain in jail, and no official court dates have been set. Mr. Arbery's family has retained legal representation and have described their son's death as a, quote, modern-day lynching. While Georgia is one of the many states with stand your ground laws on the books, subsection B of Georgia Code 16-3-21 states that the use of force is not justified if an individual initially provokes the use of force against himself with the intent to use such force as an excuse to inflict bodily harm upon the assailant. The code also states that the use of force which is intended or likely to cause death or great bodily harm is only justifiable if the individual reasonably believes that such force is necessary to prevent death or great bodily injury to themselves or a third person, or to prevent the commission of a forcible felony. Given that the McMichaels initiated contact with Mr. Arbery while brandishing weapons and chasing him down the road, it is highly unlikely that they will be entitled to a self-defense claim. Georgia's self-defense laws are designed to meet force with equal force, and the McMichaels brandished their weapons before knowing whether that force was warranted. This action may have entitled Mr. Arbery to a self-defense claim given that he was unarmed at the time of the encounter. The McMichaels decided to pursue Mr. Arbery solely based on his appearance, and offered no evidence to justify their actions outside of seeing Mr. Arbery jog past their house. Arguments have been made about the McMichaels attempting to execute a citizen's arrest on Mr. Arbery. Georgia Code 17-4-60 states that a private person may arrest an offender if the offense is committed in his presence or within his immediate knowledge. At the time of the incident, Mr. Gregory was unaware of the 911 call placed about Mr. Arbery being in the construction site and had not witnessed Mr. Arbery commit any crimes. Code 17-4-60 goes on to clarify that individuals may pursue and arrest a suspect only if the suspected crime is a felony and the individual has reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. The McMichaels were operating on a hunch at best, and even if Mr. Arbery was guilty of the prior break-ins, the McMichaels had no way of knowing that for sure and would not have had the civil authority to arrest Mr. Arbery because they did not directly witness a felony crime taking place. Overall, the McMichaels' legal defense is shaky, and unless new evidence arises during the trial, they will likely be prosecuted for their crimes. It is important to bear in mind that this is an ongoing case, and as new evidence arises, the circumstances and variables of this interaction are likely to change. By now, it has been well established that African Americans are disproportionately victimized by police officers, but Mr. Arbery's case sheds light on the cultural adversity facing the African American community that extends beyond the realm of law enforcement. If Mr. Arbery's death had not been met with public outrage, then it is likely that no criminal charges would have ever been filed against the McMichaels, and Mr. Arbery's family would have been left with no answers. One of the most remarkable injustices of this case is the failure of District Attorney Johnson and District Attorney Barnhill to pursue an investigation into the incident, and allowing the McMichaels to go free despite having more than enough evidence to warrant an arrest. Their lack of action is a testament to the level of corruption that often plagues relatively rural municipalities, and Mr. Arbery's encounter is only one of the thousands of cases that were handled under their direction. It will be interesting to see how the case plays out once the Georgia courts resume session. I am considering making a follow-up video as the case progresses. Let me know if that is something that you would be interested in watching in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more police interaction content.